The Honma family were extremely well off and respected by all who knew them. But around the beginning of the Showa era, suddenly things started to go downhill. First, their eldest daughter went missing. Then, one by one, other family members were also met with misfortune. Some lost their minds, and others even died. It wasn't until a monk visited their house that they started to get an inkling of why their luck suddenly took such a downturn. There must be a picture somewhere in this house painted in blood, and until you find it, the curse will continue unabated. But the family were unable to find it, and before long, every single one of them passed away. Only then did one of their servants find the picture. It was hidden under the floorboards. Hello and welcome to Toshiden, exploring Japanese urban legends. I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and on this show we'll be looking at different urban legends from Japan, how they came about, and, when possible, the truth behind them. If you want even more urban legends, make sure you pick up Toshiden Volume 4 for even more terrifying tales that you can find only in the books. And if you'd like early access to both this show and Kawabana, or you'd just like to support us, you can find our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin. Thanks, guys. This week, we're looking at the legend of the Honma family. The much longer version of this legend can be found in the book Verified, Japanese Haunted Houses, published in 1981 by Nakaoka Toshiya. This book collects stories from various real haunted houses around Japan, presenting them as actual hauntings with proof. Naturally, this led to many people reading the book at the time to believe these haunted houses and the people who lived in them were real. So then, did that mean an entire family was wiped out because of a picture painted in blood that they couldn't find in their own house? In the early 2000s, this story started to pick up steam on anonymous bulletin boards in particular. One person shared that they had read the story of the Honma family in a manga and later heard that it was true, so they wanted to confirm whether it was or not. But information was hard to come by, hence asking if anyone on the bulletin boards knew anything about it. All they knew was that the family was from Chiba, and the entire family died because of a picture painted in blood, perhaps by a samurai who was wronged by the family long ago. One user in the thread remarked that they remembered the story from Nakaoka's book 20 years ago, and shared some more details from that. The grandfather of the family was Yasugoro. The name of his wife, son, and son's wife were never mentioned. However, his eldest granddaughter, Fude, was the first to go missing. Yasugoro dearly loved her, and he ended up retiring and then passing away, heartbroken over the loss of his beloved granddaughter. In 1944, on the anniversary of Yasugoro's death, Ryosuke, his eldest grandson, went mad. Shortly thereafter, his next eldest grandson, Hideo, also lost his mind. It was around this time that a monk visited the house and told them the story of the bloody painting. Their family would continue to suffer until it was found. Ryosuke's eldest son, Akira, then returned from the war and lost his mind. He went into the family's storehouse and beat his head against the wall in front of Fumi, his cousin, Hideo's eldest daughter, dying right in front of her. At Akira's funeral, his younger brother also went mad, and as his brother's coffin was being loaded into the furnace, he opened it and jumped in with him. In 1947, Ryosuke's wife fell ill, And then the following year, Hideyo's youngest son, Tsuyoshi, also fell ill. The year after that, Tsuyoshi drowned himself whilst fishing. And in 1951, Ryosuke's wife also took her own life, unable to bear her sickness any longer. By 1964, only Ryosuke, Hideo, and Fumi remained. Everyone else had gone missing or died. And it was here that the family found an old urn under the floorboards while they were digging them up for something else. Inside, they found the bloody picture the monk had warned them of. By this point, the family were basically living corpses, and so Hideo, completely at his wit's end, decided to end matters once and for all. He tied his brother and daughter up in the family storehouse, and then set it on fire with all three of them inside. When their servant, Genpei, returned, he found the family members dead. They were able to put the fire out, and Genpei remained living alone in what remained of the house, until he also died shortly after sharing this story with writer Nakaoka. And with his death, the saga of the Honma family reached its conclusion. But is there any truth to this supposed real story? Did the Honma family in Chiba actually exist? Were they all wiped out, bloody picture or otherwise? The story tells us that the Honma family were from Uenohara in Tateyama City, Chiba Prefecture. They were all wiped out by 1964, when Hideo and the last family members died in a fire. This gives us a specific date, a specific location, and a specific family name to work with. In the early 1980s, it would have been much harder to dig up this information, but in the modern era, not so much. At least officially, there are no records of a Honma family ever living in Uenohara, before or after the time period this story supposedly took place. There are also no newspaper reports whatsoever of a fire that killed at least 3 family members in that area in 1964, nor any of the other deaths or disappearances described. The servant, Genpei, was also said to still be living in that house at least until the late 1970s or so, and yet no record was found of that either. Of course, it could be possible that Honma wasn't actually the family's surname, but a pseudonym used for the book to protect their identity. However, this still doesn't change that no reports were ever discovered of a fire that killed 3 people in Uenohara in 1964. The sort of thing you would expect would make the news at the time. Locals from the bulletin board thread also asked their parents and grandparents about whether they'd heard any such incidents from the 1960s and earlier, to which no one was ever able to present any evidence that they had. Several even visited the local library to dig up town histories and newspapers, but again, nothing was ever found. In 2001, Nakaoka apparently shared a story that readers believe to be related to the Honma family. This time around, the family involved were introduced as the S family, and they had bought some land in Tateyama. However, ever since moving in, the entire family kept falling sick and were suffering from bad injuries. Apparently, Mr. S himself knew of the legend of the Honma family, so he feared that the land they had bought was that same cursed land the family had died on decades earlier. He was, apparently, able to uncover that the family who were wiped out were related to the Genji clan, but other than that, was unable to find anything else of substance. And because they couldn't afford to simply get up and move again, they chose to continue living there, even with the adverse effects it was having on their health. If true, This story would imply that the Honma family home was eventually knocked down after Genpei's death, and after all the terrible events that took place there, the land itself became cursed, even with the removal of the bloody painting that supposedly started all of this. Of course, many have pointed out over the years how Nakaoka is a great storyteller, and considering the lack of evidence for anything in this particular story, there's a very good chance it was fake, or, at the very least, highly embellished and exaggerated. Did the Honma family actually exist? Were they all wiped out by a painting made in blood by a samurai who wanted revenge? It seems unlikely, and no evidence has ever been dug up to suggest any of it might be true. But at the very least, it does make for a chilling story that has lasted decades now. And that brings us to the end of this week's episode. You can help support us and get early access to both this show and Kawabana over on our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin. And if you still want even more urban legends, Toshiden Volume 4 is available right now, so don't miss out. Thanks guys, and I'll see you again next time for even more Toshiden, exploring Japanese urban legends.